This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to our brand new series, After You, a series where we're going to learn about how we can live a more generous, compassionate, and selfless life. So as you just saw, I already put your brain to the test today, and I'm hoping that you were able to follow along and keep up, but come on, let's be real. You're all pretty smart, so I'm sure that was pretty easy, right? Like, it doesn't take much concentration to follow 13 passes. But how many of you noticed the guy in the gorilla costume doing this like terrible moonwalk thing through the screen? Now, I can sense all of you freaking out right now. What gorilla? I didn't see it. Did you see it? Show it again. Well, let's see if you can see him this time.
How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go!
It's pretty crazy, right? Like, I definitely did not see the gorilla my first time through, and then if I'm being totally honest, I could barely find it when I was looking hard for him the second time. But sometimes we can be so focused on one thing that we completely miss something really obvious that's happening right in front of us. Like, I think we've all been there before. Maybe you were so focused on texting your friend about that embarrassing but totally hilarious thing that you just saw, and then all of a sudden, boom, you run straight into a wall. Or maybe you were so focused on that book that you were reading or that video game that you were playing that you didn't even notice that your mom had been calling your name for like 5 straight minutes. Or maybe you lost your phone or your glasses or your house keys and spent forever trying to find it, and then suddenly realized, oh, wait, it's in my hand. Have you ever done that? Have you ever failed to notice something obvious? As we begin this new series today, I want us to spend the next few weeks thinking and talking about what it looks like to take our eyes off of ourselves long enough to see the needs of someone else. Because the reality is there are people all around you who are going unseen. Like, maybe there's this guy from one of your classes who looks like he has it all together on the outside, but the truth is his parents are getting a divorce and he's just a mess on the inside. Or maybe there's the girl that you see at lunch who you just assume is quiet and likes to keep to herself, but in reality, she is just consumed with loneliness. Or maybe you know someone, maybe even a close friend, who is outwardly so positive and friendly and outgoing, but inwardly they're actually terrified that someone will find out just how anxious, depressed, or afraid they really are. You see, we are surrounded by people who are hurting and in need, but too often we fail to notice them, and that's not okay. And so today I want to give us an example and point us towards something and share a story of someone whose entire life was just laser focused on noticing the needs of others. When Jesus began his ministry here on earth, it's not like there weren't other religious teachers around. Like, there were plenty. But Jesus, he stood out and he gained a following like no one else. And there were a ton of reasons for that, including the fact that he was God. But here's one of those reasons. When Jesus showed up, he didn't just teach, he healed. Like, from the very beginning of Jesus' ministry, he made it a priority to meet not only the spiritual needs, but the physical needs as well. He healed the sick, he raised the dead, cast out demons, fed the hungry, befriended the lonely, he cared for those in need, and then he taught his disciples to do the same. And yet here we are 2,000 years later talking about how we love Jesus and oh, how #blessed we are, but we can't seem to put others before ourselves. In Mark 6, Jesus sent his disciples out for a short-term mission trip where they were to go out on foot and go wherever they were needed and accepted. He instructed them to preach, to heal the sick, and to cast out demons wherever they found them. And this is what happened when they got back. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all that they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going, they did not even have a chance to eat. So he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. And so the disciples told Jesus everything that had happened and all that they had done. Like, it had been a busy and exhausting trip for all of them. But then look what Jesus does. He notices that his disciples haven't eaten, that they're exhausted, and that they have been so busy. And so he meets their needs. In the passage, it goes on to say, so they got in a boat and went off to a remote place by themselves. Someone saw them going, and the word got around. From the surrounding towns, people went out on foot, running, and got there ahead of them. When Jesus arrived, he saw this huge crowd. At the sight of them, his heart broke. Like sheep with no shepherd they were. So he went right to work teaching them. And so on their way to get some rest, Jesus and the disciples, they were met with a crowd. And again, do you see what Jesus does? He notices the needs of the crowd, and then he meets them. By this time, it was late in the day, and so his disciples came to him. This is a remote place, they said, and it's already very late. Send the people away so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. But he answered, you give them something to eat. And I don't know what the disciples' attitudes were like in this passage. Like, maybe they were exhausted and just trying to get these crowds of people to go away, but maybe not. Like, maybe they were doing exactly what Jesus had taught them to do, which was to notice people's needs. And they did. Like, they noticed that the crowds were hungry, and that's a good start, but it seems like the disciples had missed something, like something important. You see, Jesus, he calls us to notice the needs of others, yes, but then he calls us to do something about it, which is the reminder that his disciples needed that day. And today, more than ever, I think that we need that same reminder, because it is so easy for us to live a me-first kind of life, isn't it? A life where we get so focused on ourselves and our own needs that we fail to notice the needs of the people right in front of us, right? But Jesus, he never lived a me-first kind of life. He completely lived an after-you kind of life, and he calls us to do the same. But now let's pause for a second, because I want to address something here. A lot of you, you're probably sitting there listening and thinking something like, wow, yes, this is really good stuff. Like, Jeff's amazing at this. The Bible is good. You get 2 thumbs up from me. I like it. And then I say, and Jesus calls you to do the same. And you're like, yep, I bet he does. And then you leave here, you wake up the next morning, and you live life like I didn't say any of this. Like, you just watch me go blah, 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 blah for 5 minutes, and then you went on with your day. But I don't want you to miss this, because this is so important. Like, God is calling you to something way bigger than living a life for yourself. He's calling you to live a life that puts others first and uses the joy that you have through Christ to bring joy, encouragement, and friendship and worth to the people around you. And now, why does this matter? Because there are too many people that you interact with every single day who believe that they have no worth, no purpose, and that life is just whatever. But we know that's not true. And Jesus tells us how to find worth and how to give worth, and there's just too much at stake to stand silent and stay scared. Like, scared of what? Making someone's day? Showing them love? Being their friend when no one else will? Oh, well, Jeff, it's not that easy. Like, you don't get it. That would be weird. And all I have to say is, no one ever said it wouldn't be. Like, no one said it would be easy. Because if it was easy, I wouldn't be talking about it. But tell me this, what do you think is more worthwhile? Lifting up and helping the person that you know who needs it? Or staying quiet and staying scared to avoid an uncomfortable moment? I know which one's easier, and I know which one can make a difference. And now, which one do you think models that after you kind of life that Jesus calls us to? Several years after Jesus died and rose from the dead, the Apostle Paul came on the scene. And after he started following Jesus, he devoted his entire life to spreading Jesus' message, including Jesus' call to live an after-you kind of life. And I just want to read one example from the letter that Paul wrote to some new Christians in the ancient town of Philippi. He says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. There are quite a few do's and don'ts in this short little passage. And I don't know about you, but I know that I need a reminder like this one to stop living so me first. But I love that Paul doesn't just tell us what not to do. Like, he also gives us quite a few things to do. Like, don't just think about yourself, but do take an interest in others. Like, don't be obsessed with your own needs, but do notice the needs of others. Like, the life of Jesus and the instructions from Paul are more than just don't be selfish. Like, they're way bigger than that. So if you're trying to do life like Jesus did, it's not enough to simply not be selfish. The way of Jesus is to go a step further and to be selfless, And that starts by noticing the needs of others. But can we be honest though? Like, serving others and living selflessly isn't always that appealing. Like, it certainly doesn't come natural to a lot of us. And so what do we do? Like, how do we become less selfish and more selfless? Like we've seen today, living selflessly, it starts with noticing others' needs, which again sounds simple on paper and hearing it in a video, but it's a lot harder to take out of here and actually do. And so here are 3 little tips that I want to give you to help you notice other people's needs this week. It might be worth writing these down or putting a reminder in your phone so that you see them every day. But here are the 3 tips that I want you to be doing well this week. First, just look. Like, literally, look up from whatever distracts you from noticing the needs of others. When you're in a position to be physically or digitally around other people, like in the hallways or at lunch, scrolling through Instagram, like, be intentional about noticing and really seeing them, because there are so many people in your life who are longing to be truly seen. Next up, discover. Like, once you've noticed someone, get curious about them. Just ask how they're doing and really listen. And then imagine what it might be like to be them and wonder about what needs that they might have that they haven't communicated. Like, that's how you discover others' needs. And lastly, do. Like, once you've truly seen someone and discovered their needs, do something about them. Just like Jesus commanded his disciples, like, go, help, act, and serve. My hope for you this series is that you start to look and live more like Jesus. Like, that should always be our goal. All throughout the Gospels, we see Jesus showing people over and over again what it looks like to live a generous, compassionate, selfless, kind of after you kind of life. Because if you're willing to live an after you kind of life, not only will the life of someone around you be changed, but your life will be changed as well. This week, what do you think could happen if you made it a point to notice as many needs around you as possible? Like, how many do you think you can notice? Maybe 5, 10, or even 50? And this week, I want to challenge you to notice someone who could use some noticing. To look, to discover, and then do something to live like Jesus and meet those needs. Because living selflessly, it starts with noticing others' needs.